So Bob, you dance, and say, IGCSE, IGCSE, good boy. And that's how easy it is to pass your IGCSE directed writing. Well, you've got to admit that was more entertaining than watching me. Good luck with the rest of the video. The first thing to notice about this exam is that it gives you an enormous amount of time, 2 hours, and that gives you plenty of time to plan and double check that you've included absolutely everything you want. Before you read any of the extract, read the question first and find out what it is that you need to read for. And I would probably read the question twice. Read the magazine article, it's about Emmanuel. You assisted Jean write a letter to persuade local businesses to donate money to expand the work of the Archway Children's Centre. Then I'll get a bit of extra help. In your letter, you should explain the work of the centre and why it's necessary, use Emmanuel's story to support your appeal, and give reasons why local businesses should support the centre. So one piece of advice I'm going to try, and I've not done this exam under exam conditions before, is I'm going to try and annotate the passage. So that bullet point I'm going to annotate in blue, this one I'm going to annotate in red, and then the final one I'm going to annotate in black. And the reason for that is that it will allow me to easily sort through the different information that I've got and then group it, because it might not be grouped in the reading material, in the text. It might not all appear in one spot. And so I'm going to see if this will help me. Okay, well, having read through the question, I'm then going to go back over it and underline the key words that will stop me forgetting any particular content. So I'm reading about this child called Emmanuel, and what do I have to do? Well, I'm going to write a letter. And it's a letter to persuade. So if you've watched any of my other videos on persuasive writing, you'll know that I'm going to use a faster crotch here because they're all persuasive techniques, they're all rhetorical. I won't call them a faster crotch techniques because that's just my mnemonic. They will be rhetorical techniques. And now I want them, that's for the purpose of my persuasive writing, to donate money. And these bullet points I'm not going to underline at the minute. I'm actually going to use them as headings, so I know they will be included in my eventual answer. Now, when I say I'm using them as headings, I won't write the headings out. I'll show you. I'll just use these as questions in my persuasive piece. Why will I use questions? Well, that's quite simple. I'm writing a persuasive piece, and I know that questioning, particularly rhetorical questions, is a persuasive technique. So I'll turn those into questions when I start to write. Next, I notice that I've got to base my letter on the magazine article. And this could lead me astray because of the next bit of advice, which will be in every exam, this instruction: be careful to use your own words. Now, obviously, when I'm referring to the magazine article, my temptation is going to be to quote. But I can't do that. I've got to use my own words, so I'm going to highlight that in a bit more of a dramatic colour on my exam paper so I really remember not to go wrong there. Okay, so the next thing I need to know is I'm given a start. I'll make sure that I start that way. I only have to write 1.5 to 2 sides in an hour, which is incredible. It would take me roughly 20 minutes a side, which it might take you 25, which means you've got time to play to actually plan this or get it right. And then the next thing I notice, which is quite interesting, is that there are 10 marks just being given away for finding the facts for these bullet points. Now, these won't be hard to find, so those 10 marks are free. I'm going to get them. I'm going to make sure I nail every single one of them, and after that, I've got 15 marks for the quality of my writing, so I'm going to think what that is in a moment. Okay, let's pause here and go to the mark scheme. And this is for the reading element, the 10 points that I'm looking for. And I find that the mark scheme doesn't say I have to get a particular number of points. So it's not like the reading paper. It says I've got to give a thorough, perceptive, convincing evaluation. So thorough means a lot of points, but it doesn't tell me how many. I've got to read between the lines, which tells me that not all the points will be absolutely obvious. And I've got to show understanding by developing much of the reading material. Okay, well, what does developing mean? Well, you'll remember from my video on the extended reading paper that it means the thoughts and feelings, presumably of the people in the extract. I'm going to be writing about Emmanuel, but I might also be writing about the business, because remember, I'm going to suggest reasons why the businesses should get involved. So as long as I'm developing feelings and thoughts of either of those two, I'm going to get the marks for developing. Okay, well that doesn't sound too hard in theory, and it's going to get me into band 1, so I'm quite encouraged so far. Okay, as I'm reading the insert, I'm going to keep the question paper open. Here I've just copied the relevant bit so that I remember what colours I'm going to annotate for. Now you can fast forward this bit if you want, but I'm going to read this live and annotate it as I would in a real exam, so you can see exactly what I'd do if I was doing this test. Among the winners at a recent awards ceremony, one 16-year-old student stood out as an inspiring example of how education can transform lives. Emmanuel, a student from an international school in the region, won the top award for art and design. Yet just 10 years earlier, Emmanuel had faced a difficult and uncertain future living on the streets. So I'm going to double check. The work of the centre, not really. I might just have it transforms lives. Then I'm going to red. Use Emmanuel's story. Well, I know he was living on the streets, so I'm going to include that. And I know that he's 16 years old. And give reasons why local businesses should support the centre. Well, that's going to be transforming lives again, so I'll just underline that in black as well. And then we go to the next paragraph. Owing to difficult family circumstances, Emmanuel ran away from home when he was just 6 years old. His parents were not able to look after him because of illness and lack of money. Initially, he begged on the streets of the capital, which exposed him to many dangers and risks of disease. His life changed forever when one day, by chance and in the hope of a meal, he found himself in the Archways Children's Centre. Okay, well, we'll go back to blue, and I now know the name of the centre, so I'm going to underline that. Is there anything else about why it's necessary? Well, possibly to help young people avoid dangers and risks, and in order to change people's lives. So change lives forever, I'm going to have that. And also because people have difficult family circumstances, so there's always going to be a need, so I'll have that. Next, I'm going to have Emmanuel's story. So ran away from home, and he was 6 years old, and we know parents were ill and they had no money, so we'll have lack of money, and he begged on the streets, which is very dangerous and risky, and he was at risk of disease. Okay, so then give reasons why local businesses should support the centre. Well, probably the big thing is risk. They're going to stop young people being at risk of all sorts of problems. Okay, I'll go to the next paragraph. It was June 1997, and from that moment my life changed, says Emmanuel. Before that, I'd been in a dark room searching for a way out. But then I found a door, and that door was the Archway Children's Centre. No one opened it for me. I opened it myself. Suddenly, after so many years of darkness, I felt as if someone had switched on all the lights. Well, I've got a bit of a problem here. This is all quotation, and I've got to use my own words. Is there anything in there about the work of the centre? No. Is there stuff about his story? Yes, I suppose there is. There's this idea of him deciding for himself, and so this idea of self-determination I'm going to have to come up with. And so I might just write that here to remind me. Self-determination. you'll have better handwriting than me, which means that he's taking his destiny into his own hands, but that was all possible because of Archway. Right, next paragraph. The centre is dedicated to empowering street children aged between 7 and 17 years old. It provides them with shelter, medical treatment and clothing, as well as education and numerous other services. Their vision is of a country in which all children can enjoy their basic rights to survival, development, protection and participation in society. They believe that every child has a talent and a need for it to be discovered and nurtured. Well, I know immediately that that's all about one thing. It's nothing to do with his story. It's going to give me a lot about the work of the centre, so let's go blue. And so it empowers street children, and they are aged 7 to 17. It gives them shelter, medical treatment, clothing, education, and other services. Okay. It's got a vision, so I might mention that, but I think that's more about why the businesses should support them, actually, so I'm going to go with black. So businesses are going to help create this vision, basic rights for survival, and participation in society. Going to develop every child's talent and nurture it. Okay, I probably don't need nurture, I'll get rid of that. Right. Okay, so now we move on to the rest of the text. The Archway provided primary school education for Emmanuel and gave him shelter at home. At school, he discovered a talent for painting that was fostered by Sister Jean, the centre founder. With her help, he secured a scholarship to continue his secondary education locally. Emmanuel explains, Sister Jean recognised that the international school was the only place where I could develop my artistic potential. There I had inspirational teaching and encouragement to aim high. Okay, so I'm going to go with black here. Why should businesses contribute? Because they're going to have inspirational teaching, and they're going to get students into primary school, and they're also going to get them into secondary school. Next, I'll look at Emmanuel's own story and this idea that he had a talent for painting, which was fostered by Sister Jean, the centre's founder. Then we move to the next paragraph. Following his outstanding examination result in art and design, in addition to good grades in other subjects, Emmanuel is now hoping to pursue a career as an illustrator. Sister Jean is searching for a scholarship to enable him to go to art school abroad to continue his studies. He intends to return to his home country at the end of his course to teach art to local children as well as to produce his own design work. So I've got more reasons for businesses to support. They're going to pay for travel to the home country. Why should they do that? Because it's going to benefit local children there. And it's also going to continue to educate him. So I've got lots of reasons there. And then we have some great things about his own story. So after the development of art, he's going to pursue a career as an illustrator. And finally, in that paragraph, part of the job of the centre seems to be to find opportunities abroad, so I'm going to underline that. In the next paragraph, Emmanuel is passionate about the Academy Children's Centre and he wants to help other children who are living on the streets in order to show his gratitude for all that the centre has done for him. With this in mind, he contributed his story to a book published to raise money for the centre and to show how lives can be transformed through education. The stories are all written and illustrated by the centre's children. So I've got some work of the centre going on there. They've raising money. They've published a book to do it. And they've done it with the children, so they're empowering them. A bit more of Emmanuel's story. He's grateful and he's contributed a story to the book. And then I scan over again and I realise that there's nothing new in here about why businesses should support. So I now move to the final paragraph. The number of street children in this country is rising dramatically, and it's estimated that there are 3,500 in the capital alone. Emmanuel says, without the centre's founder and my own efforts, my artistic talent would never have been discovered. I was not only helped to overcome my difficulties, I was given a complete rescue package. I hate to think what would have happened to me, where I would be now, if chance had not directed me to the ever-open door of the archway. Many of the children who were begging with me on the street were not so lucky, and they became criminals or the victims of crime. Whoever buys the book, which is helping to rescue more street children and opening the door so that they can step into the future. One day, I want to be able to say that I helped other street children to find out what they're good at. I hope to help them shine. Okay, so there's some more stuff about the work of the centre. Massive number of children to help. There's the idea of a complete rescue package. And there's the need to be ever open and always available. Reasons why local businesses should help. Well, the other children who were begging with me are now criminals or victims of crime, and so I'm helping a whole generation. So businesses are all about improving their future and to raise money to cope with the dramatic rise in numbers of young people in need of help. Okay, so that's 10 minutes out of my hour gone, and it means I still have roughly 50 minutes to write my response. And another way of looking at that is to say that I've spent 10 minutes looking for 10 marks for the reading, and hopefully I've got everything that I need. Let's double check with the exam criteria. Okay, let's go through them one by one. Yes, it saves children, prevents children from becoming involved in crime, gives them a future, changes lives, nurtures talents, provides a full range of shelter and support, believes children have a right to a place in society. No, I didn't get that one. Number of street children on the rise, published a book. So I've got only one of those missing. And by the way, I didn't read this before I looked at the paper. I did this like a real exam. Turned up at the age of 6, showed early talent for painting, adapted to international school education, maybe, I probably haven't got that. Excellent in art, yes. Wants to become an illustrator, yes. Intends to return to his country, yes. Committed to helping others, but maybe not develop their artistic skills. So I've missed definitely one bullet point there. Reasons for business to support. They need the financial support. Children with talent and dedication need further education that the centre can't give. Yes, I've got that when I'm talking about the primary, secondary school and international school. There are many other young adults like Emmanuel. Well, I've got that with the rising number of homeless people. Business benefit from publicity gained. Now, I haven't added that in, so this is the sort of thing that's reading between the lines, that's not actually in the passage. Commerce has a moral obligation to help the underprivileged. Again, this is reading between the lines and not in the passage. And businesses benefit from increased educational skill levels in the local community. Again, which is not in the passage. So now we can see that the extra marks are given for inference, which, just like in the reading paper, is the third bullet point. And then if we look down the bottom here, you will notice that I began by saying what a fair exam it is, and here's the proof: accept all other relevant ideas derived from the passage and relevant to the question. So there aren't right or wrong answers. Okay, before I start writing, it's worth getting to know this exam a little more thoroughly. What am I going to be marked on in my writing for these 15 marks that are available? Well, I've got to have my sense of audience, so I'm writing to businesses. I'm going to remember to be formal. I've got to be authoritative. In other words, I've got to really persuade them. That's no problem because I'm going to use the faster crotch techniques, and that will also take care of my appropriate style. I'm not going to put any jokes in there, for example, because I'm remembering who I'm writing for. Next, I'm going to use varied sentences, and this is something I teach my students all the time. We practice beginning sentences with adverbs or verbs, or having short sentences that are 3, 4, or even one word long. we practice having really long sentences that have to be at least 35 words or that contain colons and semicolons, and that forces you to have a variety of sentences. But actually the easy shorthand for doing that is just to say one thing to yourself. Start every sentence in a different way. And once you do that, your writing becomes immediately sophisticated and it leaps up into the top band. So start each sentence in a different way and you're going to get into band 1. Then I've got a strong sense of structure here, paragraphing and sequence. So I'll remember to always paragraph for changes of time and topic. There won't be any talk in this instance because it's not that kind of writing, there's no conversation in it. And I'm going to double check everything for error. And then finally, as I would expect, it wants a wide range of vocabulary. So I'm just going to imagine there's a thesaurus in my head and I'm going to use it as often as I can. If I'm unsure of a word, I won't use it because I don't want to sound stupid. In my next video, I'll be taking you through how I actually write my answer to the question. And I don't actually need to do this, of course, because I'm not taking the exam, but I want to show you what it actually feels like to write under exam conditions. So look out for that, it will be available later today, and please subscribe.